Thank you all for joining us. I want to thank Chief Quinlan, Sergeant Diane Yandrich, Shori Hamani from the Department of Technology. In January, the Columbus Community Safety Advisory Commission released its recommendations for the policies and procedures for the Columbus Division of Police. This came on the heels of the report and recommendations of Matrix Consulting, an independent consulting firm that looked into the operations of CPD. In all, there are more than 200 recommendations to improve the policies and procedures of CPD, from recruiting and training to officer wellness and discipline. In addition, since being named Chief Quinlan has come up with his own list of initiatives that he is instituting to better serve the public. All of these are part of instituting police reform, and we want the public to be able to help keep track of where each recommendation and initiative stands. Today, we're launching an interactive dashboard to help keep track of progress made toward implementing these recommendations, accessible to the public at columbus.gov/CPD dashboard. Let us show you around.
Our top priority is making positive changes to protect all residents of Columbus and the people who visit here. The Columbus Division of Police has created a dashboard for the public to keep track of the implementation of these changes. First stop is the Columbus Community Safety Advisory Commission recommendations. You can see the whole report by clicking here, and keep track of implementation of changes by clicking here. Each of the recommendations are listed and color-coded by where it stands in the process. Blue means completed, like number 4, establishing a budget to meet the needs for recruitment. Green means in progress, like making the recruiting materials available in multiple languages. Orange means it is approved but requires additional funding or bargaining into the FOP contract. An incentivized annual officer wellness assessment falls in this category. And then there is yellow, that means the recommendation requires further development. For example, adding points to a potential recruit's score for additional language fluency and competence needs to be implemented by civil service. Want to know more about the status of the recommendation? Hover over the color-coded box next to the recommendation. If you want to search for recommendations, you can filter your search with drop-down menus by status, subdivision, or bureau. The implementation of these recommendations will be updated monthly. You can also check the status of recommendations made in the Matrix report. You can see the whole report by clicking here, or click here to see recommendations. The color code system is the same as the Columbus Community Safety Advisory Commission recommendations. The dashboard also includes CPD initiatives for positive change in areas like community, youth, and diversity. Finally, the dashboard includes information about recruiting and training. How can you become a Columbus police officer? And what training do our officers go through? Columbus, Ohio is our home, and we are proud to be part of this progressive and diverse community.
Now I'd like to introduce our Chief of Police, Tom Quinlan. Chief? Chief, we can't hear you.
Okay, I have two different mutes going, so thank you. I apologize. Thank you, Mayor, and I'd like to particularly thank the Department of Technology for putting this phenomenal dashboard together so quickly and professionally. I think it's very important anytime we have such a broad spectrum of recommendations from two different groups, along with projects we're working on internally as well, that some things can get kicked to the wayside or be lost in the progress is being made. I think it's very important to maintain that transparency with the public so you can see the work that was done from the Matrix Commission or Matrix Report, Mayor's Community Safety Advisory Commission, and be able to take a look at that and see what has been accomplished. And as we update this over time, see where progress is being made, see where there's still issues that maybe need to move to the front of the list, so to speak. For instance, my Chiefs Advisory Panel can take a look at this and say we need to prioritize items 1, 2, and 3 and get those on the fast track. So there's a lot of people that will be able to weigh into this. Really proud of the progress the division's made and the office's willingness to reform. I think there's a very clear mandate to do that. I think this dashboard lays out the progress that we are willing to take on for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Quinlan. I do want to emphasize that 68% of the Safety Advisory Commission recommendations and 56% of the Matrix recommendations have been completed or are in progress. And as you all know, Issue 2, about November, allows Columbus residents to vote on a civilian review board, another recommendation by the Safety Commission, and embed that as part of the city charter, our Constitution. We have a work group with a diverse group of community members working on the details of the best civilian review board for Columbus. Chief Quinlan also meets regularly with the Chiefs Advisory Council to discuss the community's thoughts on policing, giving him some specific feedback and ideas around policies and procedures that are all within the Chief's purview. Transparency, accountability, and trust are the foundation to improving police and community relations. And through this dashboard, through Issue 2, and the establishment of Civilian Review Board, we're working to rebuild trust, advance real change, and real reform now. I'm committed to moving from a 20th century law enforcement system to a 21st century community policing model. Chief Quinlan is committed to being the change agent we need to move these recommendations forward. Now, we'd be happy to take questions from the media. We're going to use the raised hand function. I know you were sent instructions, but just want to review them. You should see a hand icon in the bottom right corner of your screen. Click on the hand and you will see a hand next to your name in the attendee list. That's how we know you have raised your hand for a question. We'll unmute you to ask your question. Please tell us your name and what outlet you're with. And after your question has been addressed, please click the hand next to your name to turn off the function. Obviously, if you have additional questions or follow-up, please click it again. With that, we'll take your questions. Looks like our first question is from Sean Lanier. If you just introduce yourself and your media outlet, please.
Yes, this is Sean Lanier with NBC4. Just a question when it comes to the dashboard, and Chief Quinlan kind of touched on it with the, his council that'll kind of prioritize things. Are there any incentives to try to get things done in a timely manner? If there's something on that dashboard that's not moving forward, there's community concern, is there anything from the city or from the police perspective that can kind of speed things up in a sense so it's not just sitting there in the same color that it's been in for a while?
Well, I'll answer that question and let the chief speak to it as well. I made very clear to him that the recommendations of the Safety Advisory Commission and recommendations from the Matrix report were part of his work plan that he will be evaluated upon. And so I think he certainly has created a sense of urgency to implement these recommendations and make progress on these recommendations. And ultimately, I answer the people of Columbus. And so if significant progress is not made on these recommendations, and changes and reforms we know need to make. Ultimately, I'll be held accountable by the people at the end at the next election. Chief, any additional comments around that?
Thank you, Mayor. As you can see with these recommendations, there's a number of them that I've approved that I intend to implement. There's a couple hurdles to get over. One would be a collective in the middle of negotiation. So there'll be certain things that we have to negotiate and other things that we have to deal with from a funding standpoint. And there's certain times of the year that we have to submit by for the next calendar year to make sure that those things are properly budgeted and vetted. So that's why it helps to prioritize those and show which ones are by color, which ones have not had any progress on it. We have made steps to both the seizure fund and through the annual operating budget and expansion budget seek these improvements for 2021 as well moving forward.
The only other thing I would add, Sean, is that our intention is for the chief and I to report out to the committee overall, but also members of the Safety Advisory Commission, regularly on our progress and status with respect to the recommendations. The sharing of this dashboard, though, gives the average person out there, taxpayer and resident of the community, to be able to check in at any given point in time and be able to see our progress and hold us accountable. So I think just another way to add some transparency, accountability to this work and our work to change and reform. Sean, do you have a question or?
And my other question is just kind of we talked about issue 2 a little bit, and understanding that is obviously going on the ballot. But when something like that, if it doesn't get passed, or if there's something that you guys are finding some resistance or some difficulty with getting change, I know you said you're going to update it once a month, but is there information that people in the community and in the public can expect to get from this dashboard?
With respect to issue 2 or in general?
Anything, just kind of the frequency in which the dashboard will be updated. I believe you said once a month or so, but is there any other, is there a way for community and the public to ask questions to get other responses through this dashboard? Or is this purely just you all putting out the information as you all are kind of getting it accomplished?
Well, certainly as we share information, it'll be updated once. But as I had shared, the chief and I are going to be briefing the community and the members of the Safety Advisory Commission on progress on these recommendations. Obviously, we're always available to answer any questions, take any calls from the public if they want to dive deeper into a particular recommendation or where we're at in implementation.
I am good.
Thank you, Sean. I think our question is from Bethany Bruner.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Chief Quinlan. This is Bethany Bruner with the Columbus Dispatch. You mentioned issue 2. One of the concerns that we have been hearing from folks surrounding issue 2 is the lack of detail that has been provided to this point regarding the specifics of the review board, how many people specifically will be on it, how they will be chosen. And their concern is that if those details aren't released prior to the election, how will they know what they're actually voting for and approving? So I guess, is there an updated timeline on when some of that information might be available to them, to the public? And if not, how do they know exactly what they're approving aside from the general idea of a review board?
Well, my guess is some of the folks you may be hearing from oppose any change in reform overall, and quite honestly are going to do everything in their power to protect the status quo, which is not acceptable. Oftentimes when charter amendments have been put forward, there's been a framework. Clearly, this charter amendment has that framework. All the details have not been spelled out, as when we would develop the Board of Health or Recreation and Parks and other things we put before the voters to adopt the framework the language of the charter amendment, but hasn't spelled out every particular detail about how that entity would function and work. We are continuing to meet, the Civilian Review Board Working Group, looking at best practices around the country, and they'll make recommendations to us on everything from the numbers of members, their terms, requirements that we think are important, making sure that folks have gone through an extensive amount of training and ride-alongs and those types of things, and making sure that this group reflects the beautiful diversity of the community and all the perspectives in Columbus. So I believe that there is strong, good, clear information out there about this issue, and there's overwhelming support from it, from the business community, from the faith community, from organized labor, from groups across this community. And as you can see, a number of organizations that have already endorsed the issue. But there will always be those that want things to stay the way they've always been and want to protect the status quo. That's not acceptable, and we're not going to stand back and not embrace this opportunity for change and reform. Do you have another question, Bethany?
Kind of. I had actually just forgotten to put my hand down as I was taking notes, so I apologize. But since I have the floor, the city has allocated up to $50,000 for Baker Hostetler to investigate the tweets made by a deputy chief earlier this summer. A lieutenant with the Division of Police has self-published a book in which she says that she is, quote, bulletproof, end quote, from retaliation from the city or an investigation. Will the lieutenant be facing any sort of investigation by Baker Hostetler similar to what the deputy chief, that investigation is currently ongoing?
I'd be happy to get back to you on that. I don't really have a response to that. I haven't read the lieutenant's book, and, a lot of our focus and effort is around reform and change, knowing that racism and discrimination exists not just in the Division of Police, but in city government, your newsroom, and in organizations, businesses around this community and country. And our efforts really focus on calling it out, addressing it, and owning the remedy to change it and reform it. But I'd be happy to get back to your specific question about the lieutenant and the lieutenant's book and whether or not that's being investigated by Baker Hostetler. I'm not aware of that at this time. Sean, do you have another question?
I'm good.
All right. Any other questions from the press? Well, thank you all for joining us here today. Thank you, Chief, and have a good afternoon, everybody.